Welcome to today's deep dive. We're going to ancient Greece, to the Acropolis, and that amazing Parthenon, those classic columns, the ones that look so perfect. What if I told you that perfection is actually an illusion?
Yeah, it's true. The Parthenon is like architectural deception at its finest. Those straight lines and right angles everyone sees, well, they aren't exactly what they seem. The architects, Ictinus and Callicrates, and the sculptor Phidias, they were playing a clever game with how we see things.
Okay, I'm hooked. Tell me more. How did they create this architectural magic trick?
By using subtle curves and precise proportions throughout the entire building,
hmm
they basically tricked the eye into seeing something that's not actually there. It's visual sleight of hand, designed to make the building look even more beautiful and grand.
And I'm trying to picture it. I'm at the foot of the Parthenon, craning my neck to see it all. What would I notice? How would these illusions change my perception?
Imagine looking up at those massive columns. They seem so impossibly straight. But here's the secret. They're not actually straight. Every column has a tiny bulge in the middle. It's barely noticeable. Then they taper at the top and base.
So they're kind of like really fancy barrels.
Exactly. And there's a reason for that curve. If they were perfectly straight, they'd look like they were caving inwards from far away. Adding that subtle bulge, the architects fixed that illusion, making those columns look strong and perfectly upright to anyone looking up from below.
Wow, incredible. They were messing with our perception of space and shape over 2,000 years ago. But wait, there's more to it, right? It can't just be those bulging columns.
Oh, absolutely. The Parthenon is packed with these subtle tricks. Remember the golden ratio? It's key here. The architects use it for everything, from the size of the columns to how they're spaced apart. This ratio, about 1.618, creates visual harmony. People have recognized it for centuries, all over the world.
So they weren't just adding curves randomly. They were using this complex math principle to create a specific look.
Exactly. And it wasn't just about looks either. They used this ratio to connect the building to nature, to those proportions you find in things like seashells or flowers, even the human body. It's like they were making a building that resonated with something bigger, something fundamental to the universe itself.
That's amazing. It's like they were trying to build a structure that wasn't just beautiful, but in tune with the cosmos.
Hmm.
Did they have a method for placing these curves and ratios? Or was it more of a gut feeling?
It was definitely planned out, based on a deep understanding of geometry and optics. They knew how the human eye would see the structure from different angles and distances. They used that knowledge to their advantage.
I can see why they call those ancient Greek architects geniuses. They weren't just builders, they were artists and mathematicians, blending science and beauty in a way that's still relevant today.
And remember, they didn't have modern technology. They relied on their knowledge of geometry, their sharp observations, and a lot of trial and error.
Speaking of observations, you mentioned the Parthenon's on top of the Acropolis, a hill. How did that affect their design choices?
That was a huge factor. The Acropolis is a hill. Most people would see the Parthenon from below. Looking up, that view can mess with how we see straight lines, making them look like they're sagging or bowing out.
So by curving the lines upwards, they counteracted that distortion, making the building look straight, even when you're below it.
Exactly. They pre-corrected for how our eyes would see it, a perfect example of how they thought about the viewer's experience and designed accordingly.
So they designed the entire structure with that specific view in mind. It's like they were making a piece of art,
Yeah.
meant to be seen from one spot, like a stage set.
That's a great comparison. They were creating a spectacle, a symphony of shapes and proportions, designed to fill you with awe and wonder. And it wasn't just the columns and the overall structure. Every detail, from those horizontal beams to the roofline, it was carefully planned and tweaked to enhance the overall effect.
Tell me more about those other elements, especially that horizontal line. What's its role in this grand illusion?
That beam's called the architrave. It runs across the tops of the columns, holding up the roof, and that triangular pediment on top. And guess what? It's not straight either. It's subtly arched upwards, just like the columns.
Okay, so if everything is curved upwards, wouldn't the whole thing look, well, kind of wonky?
That's where their skill shines. The curves are so slight and so perfectly calculated that they blend together smoothly. We don't see them individually. What we see is the overall effect, effortless grace and perfect balance.
It's like they were playing 4D chess with architecture, thinking about how it would look, from all angles, distances, and even under the strong Athenian sunlight.
You got it. And don't forget about the light. The Parthenon was built where there's a lot of bright sun, That light could create harsh shadows and make those straight lines look even more obvious.
I see. So by adding the curves, they softened the shadows, creating more visually appealing play of light and shadow
Yeah.
across the building.
Exactly. The curves basically scattered the sunlight, getting rid of those harsh contrasts that might
Yeah.
have disrupted the harmony of the building.
I'm starting to get just how much planning and brilliance went into the Parthenon. It wasn't just throwing some columns up and calling it a day.
Not at all. Every little detail, every curve, every angle, it was thought about and put in place strategically. What's amazing is that these techniques weren't just for the Parthenon. They were part of a larger architectural tradition in Greece.
Really? So tell me about some other structures. Where they use these tricks? What else can we learn from these old architectural marvels?
Well, there's the Temple of Demeter on the island of Naxos. It's older than the Parthenon, and it shows that they didn't just suddenly invent these optical refinements. It was a gradual development in their architecture.
So they were already using these techniques centuries before the Parthenon. That's incredible. You've talked about the columns and the architrave, but what about the staircases? The ones leading up to the Parthenon, are they straight?
You'd think they would be right, but even the staircases are part of the illusion. Instead of being level, they slope downwards toward the entrances.
Wait, sloping downwards, that doesn't seem right. Wouldn't it feel like they're sinking?
I know it sounds strange, but it's all part of the plan. That downward slope actually makes it feel grander and more monumental. When you look at the Parthenon from below, it's as if the whole structure is being lifted up, defying gravity.
Wow, I never would have thought of that. It's amazing how the angle of a staircase can change how we see a building. But was that just for looks, or was there a practical reason for sloping the stairs down?
You're right to ask that. The Greeks were great at combining beauty and function. That sloping design wasn't just for aesthetics, it also worked as a drainage system. Rainwater would flow down the stairs and away from the temple, preventing damage and erosion.
So it's like a two-for-one, making the Parthenon look imposing while also keeping it safe from the elements. It's amazing how they achieved so much with one design choice.
You know, thinking about this, I wonder how the ancient Athenians felt when they saw these illusions. Was it purely visual, or were they trying to make people feel a certain way, or think about specific ideas?
That's a great question. It gets right to the heart of Athenian culture and their worldview. Remember, the Parthenon wasn't just any building. It was a temple to Athena, their goddess of wisdom, warfare, and craft. It represented the best of Athens, a symbol of their power, sophistication, and cultural dominance.
So by using these illusions, were they trying to create a sense of awe and reverence? In the people who saw the Parthenon, were they showing off their mastery over the physical world, their ability to make even stone and marble look divinely perfect? Exactly. The Athenians were all about order, harmony, and balance. These ideas were in their philosophy, art, politics, and of course their architecture. The Parthenon, with all its illusions, it makes these values real and visible. It shows their belief in human ingenuity and their desire for excellence.
I can imagine an Athenian citizen standing in front of the Parthenon, gazing up at those seemingly perfect columns, bathed in sunlight. It must have been an incredible experience. Did they know they were being tricked? That the perfection was an illusion? Or was it more about the overall feeling, being in the presence of something truly extraordinary?
That's a fascinating question. We can only guess. But I think even if they understood how the illusions worked, it wouldn't have made the experience any less powerful. The Greeks were deep thinkers. They knew that perception was complex and subjective. They might have even seen these illusions as a reflection of that very idea, that what we see is real, is shaped by our minds and how we interpret things.
So the Parthenon wasn't just a building, it was a statement about the nature of perception and the limits of human understanding. It's amazing how much meaning and symbolism can be packed into a single structure.
That's what makes studying ancient structures like the Parthenon so rewarding. It's not just about admiring their beauty or how they were built. It's about trying to understand the people who made them, their values, their beliefs, their worldview. It's a journey of discovery, uncovering layers of history, culture, and human ingenuity,
And sometimes those layers are right there in front of us.
hidden in plain sight, disguised as subtle curves and carefully calculated proportions, just waiting for us to figure them out.
Exactly. Even in a world full of digital images and special effects, there's something captivating about how a real building can play with our perception and make us feel a sense of wonder. It shows the power of human creativity and the timeless appeal of artistry and ingenuity combined.
I have a question. We've talked about how these illusions look and how they create that feeling of awe and harmony. But were there any practical benefits? Besides aesthetics and drainage, did they help make the Parthenon stronger in any way?
You've touched on another fascinating aspect. Those curves weren't just for looks. They actually made the building stronger and helped it last longer.
Really? How could something so subtle make a difference in a building as huge as the Parthenon?
It's all about distributing weight and resisting forces. That slight inward curve of the columns helped them handle the weight from above, and the upward curve of the architrave and pediment helped counteract the outward push. That happens in buildings with heavy roofs. So those illusions weren't just fooling our eyes, they were fooling gravity too, like a cosmic game of push and pull. Finding that balance between looking good